Hey everyone, it is Mary Hyatt and welcome to the Mary Hyatt Show. I am super excited that you are joining me today live on YouTube, or maybe you are catching the recording a little bit later. Welcome nonetheless. I'm so glad you are here. I'm so glad that we get to meet and that we get to share this journey together. And so let me get everything settled here from a technical point. And of course, for those of you who are watching live on YouTube, I want to encourage you to comment, to engage. I am so excited for the topic of today's show, which is all about staying present when life feels like it is too much. And I'm going to share a little bit of a story with you guys here once we officially start that it's just been quite the week, y'all. I mean, hello, I am in my yoga clothes today. I've got my beanie on because it's just been a whirlwind and I know that I'm not alone. So before we get into today's show, let's officially begin. Hey y'all, it is Mary Hyatt and welcome to the Mary Hyatt Show. Today is episode number 63, Staying Present When Life Feels Like It Is Too Much. Can I get a amen? Can I get a girl? I know what you were talking about. I don't know what's going on with the energy right now, but it is intense. And I have spent the past I spent 4 days last week and then 1 day this week in a goal setting course. And then yesterday I spent all day in a business mastermind, which has been so helpful just to slow down, to begin to think about everything that I want to create and how I'm going to chunk it down to make it happen. And part of what I love to do with my coaching clients is help them with the same thing. So it was fun to be able to take this time aside to actually do it for myself, because it's one thing to have all of this knowledge and to know how to walk people through the process of visualizing and dreaming and getting their hopes and their intention and their goals down on paper. And it's another thing to actually set the time aside to do it yourself. And so I just spent some significant time sort of mapping out what I want to create. And I don't know if this happens for you guys when you kind of sit down and you take inventory of where your life is and you think about, okay, what's been working? What have I loved doing? How is the state of my business? Where am I thriving? Where am I finding the most energy? And then sort of on the flip side, what's not working? What should I be doing? What is sort of getting ignored or falling through the cracks, whether that's personal issues, relationships, your body, your health, even just how you're delegating or how you are running your actual business. There can be this panic that happens and it can be intense. And so I was sitting in this mastermind yesterday and I was with all these amazing, successful people and starting to kind of think about, of course, what they're doing and how I am not measuring up. And my mind went into panic. I was looking down at my paper and I'm like, oh my God, I've got all this stuff that I want to accomplish, all these things that I want to create. And it felt like I was behind the 8 ball. I was already struggling. I was already behind. And I started going into this looping pattern within my mind of I'm not enough, I'm not good enough, I'll never amount to anything, I'm already failing, I'm already behind. And all of a sudden, I'm kind of spiraling in this internal mental conversation while I'm like listening, to the presenter and being on this table with these other entrepreneurs and business owners. And I'm like, I gotta bolt. Like, I gotta get the hell out of this room. I don't belong here. And I started to just freak out internally. I really allowed my mind to take over, and all the negative thoughts, all the fearful thoughts were running the show. And I started to feel so paralyzed. I was just so like, oh my gosh. And so the first thought that I had was, okay, I don't even know that I even consciously thought this, but it was like fight, flight, or freeze, right? So it was like, how can I stop this pain? How can I not feel this discomfort that I'm feeling right now? And thankfully, I'm going to share some tools with you on how to do that from a really healthy angle or standpoint. But oftentimes when we get hit with this overwhelm of emotion, we don't want to sit in it, feel it, process it, get back to the present moment. We do anything else that we can to numb out and bolt and run and hide and ignore and deny and pretend that we're actually not in this discomfort. So we're going to get into that today, and I'm going to share with you 5 ways that you can really stay present when life feels like it's too much, whether that be you are triggered by a body shame moment and all of a sudden you start hating your body and you're judging your body. If you are having an onslaught of grief that's coming up, if you feel kind of like I did, where you feel overwhelmed with what you want to create this year in your business, I'm going to share some ways that you can begin to slow the chatter down and come back into the present moment. But before we get into all of that, I want to make sure that you know about my 10-day self-discovery retreat to Peru. I am so excited about this, you guys. This is a trip from April 7th to April 16th, 10 days where we get to see the most magical land you've ever been to. It truly is one of the most gorgeous places that I've ever been to. We visit Machu Picchu. We visit a lot of different sacred sites in the Sacred Valley. We see mountains. We see salt mines. We are also coming together very spiritually and very intentionally to look at our lives in a powerful way. And I'll walk you through different meditations, guided meditations, some gentle yoga for all body types. We're going to be participating in different ceremonies too with local Peruvian shamans, like fire ceremony where we build this beautiful bonfire and burn the things, we write it down on paper and burn the things that are holding us back. We do a sweat lodge together. And so it is a very intimate trip. It's not a large trip with a big group of people, but it's a very small group with me. And so if you're interested in that, you can go to maryhyatt.com/Peru retreat. And on that website, you will see the entire itinerary, what we do every day, and you'll get a better feel of what the trip looks like. And if it might be the right next step for you to show up and engage in your life with renewed energy, being with people who are like-minded, and of course, spending some amazing intimate time with me in a country that I know you will absolutely fall in love with. So maryhyatt.com/Peru retreat. And those of you who maybe this is your first time listening to the show, I want to make sure that you know I do this show every week on YouTube Live, and it's also available as an audio podcast. So if you're watching the YouTube live show, head on over and listen to the podcast if you feel like you want to take me anywhere you want to go. And this past year, I made a really bold move to get off social media and reclaim my life. And so the only way to know about my upcoming shows, it's not on Instagram, it's not on Facebook, is to subscribe to this show. And it's that easy, and it's the only way that you'll be able to stay connected to me. And I want to make sure that you subscribe right now. Just hit that subscribe button. Of course, you can offer a 5-star rating on your podcasting app. Of course, you can write me a personal review, which I would so appreciate. But however you are listening to music, subscribe to the Mary Hyatt Show. All right, so let's get back to today's show. So like I said, this common experience of having an overwhelming emotional experience, something that triggers discomfort or pain or in just intense emotions, we don't know how to handle that. You know, from a very early age, we have learned that if life feels like it's too much, you know, we pull away. This is a very universal survival kind of technique: fight, flight, or freeze. And so when anything is extra unpleasant or uncomfortable, oftentimes the only solution that we know is to avoid, to pull away. And it becomes sort of a subconscious behavior. We don't even know so much that we're doing it. we instantly leave our bodies. We begin to numb out through alcohol, through shopping, through social media, through overworking, through drugs. I mean, all kinds of different things. And we feel depressed, we start chasing after something to avoid feeling all of this emotional intensity. And we aren't feeling rested. We aren't feeling at peace. And sort of there's this underlying anxiety that's going on, this underlying stress that's happening. And we have lost touch with this ability to sort of walk ourselves through the process of getting back into the present moment. And so we end up, begin to disassociate with what's going on, and we leave the present. And so when you think about disassociating, the definition for this is any habitual rejection of what is going on. Any moment when we say this is not okay, a pain in our body, an emotion that comes up like fear or loneliness or shame or anger, what happens is instead of opening up to it, we would rather just pull away. And so there's some sort of level of disassociation and retreat that is going on. And it's kind of like Brene talks about it. Brene Brown. I say Brene like she's my best friend. It's like, oh yeah, Brene talks about this. No, Brene Brown, if you guys aren't familiar with her, she is an author and a speaker. She's amazing. And she kind of talks about this as she would phrase it and call it emotionally arming up. And so each morning we emotionally arm up for what we are going to probably be facing during our day. What's our emotional home? And so we sort of arm ourselves against feeling shame, anxiety, uncertainty, fear. And this particular armor she talks about changes from person to person, but it usually revolves around one of these three methods: striving for perfection, numbing out, or disrupting joyful moments by dress rehearsing tragedy and imagining all the ways that things could go wrong. So when you think about yourself and you think about when you start your day and the energy that is behind your day and sort of how you disassociate and how you avoid the overwhelm of your life, do you kind of go into striving for perfection, like that hyper control? Or do you feel like you just check out, you just numb out, you use substance, you use media to check out? Or do you sort of go into this looping of fear, playing out worst case scenario? She calls it dress rehearsing tragedy, sort of this anxiety, this fear of what's coming. So I would love to hear from you. If you're watching the YouTube live, comment and let me know which is your go-to: control, numb, or fear and anxiety. And I know for me, it's really a mix. It's kind of all over the place for me. I would say most often my go-to is usually first playing out fear, playing out worst case scenario. My second is numbing out. And my third is probably control. I don't do a ton of the control piece for me, but gosh, that playing out worst case scenario, that's default for me. So when I was sitting in that conference room in this mastermind with all these entrepreneurs who I, of course, am in a dialogue in my head thinking that they're more advanced, they're better, sort of having that imposter syndrome, like I don't belong here, I go into worst case scenario. Well, what happens if I don't complete any of these goals? What happens if I fall flat on my face? What happens if I don't make any more money than I did last year? What happens if my business doesn't succeed in the way that I want it to? Oh my gosh, then I'm a failure. Then I'm going to go, hungry, and I'm going to lose my house. And, I start going into this cycle of worst case scenario. And obviously that is not comfortable. That is not pleasant. And so when I start playing that out, usually I start to numb. I start to check out in any way that I can. And so what's interesting about this armor is that it makes us feel in control in the moment. It's like if we play out worst case scenario, somehow we think if we do that, then we won't be blindsided. We won't have the rug pulled out from under us. We won't be surprised. We'll sort of know it's coming and it will hurt less. Or we want to control by eating, or drinking, or watching TV, Netflix, or, looking on social media, whatever it might be. It makes us feel like we're in control in the moment. But it's an illusion. I mean, it really is an illusion. And by avoiding what's actually getting stirred up inside of us, we're doing ourselves more harm than we are good, because it takes us away from the present. And when we start numbing out and we start disconnecting and disassociating from our present moment, it's like everything gets turned off. Brene Brown, I can't remember the exact quote, but she talks about something like, you cannot selectively numb. When you numb the dark, you also numb the light. And so by going into this place where we check out, we don't get to experience the joy, the love, the pleasure, the fulfillment, the happiness of life, because we can't selectively numb. When we numb the dark, we numb the light. And so for all of you watching or listening on your podcast app, I am curious. This is kind of the question of the day, and we can begin our time together with self-reflection and self-inventory. And the question is, what am I unwilling to feel? So I like to practice this in real time, of course. So wherever you are, if you're in your car, if you're listening to this audio, if you are watching at your desk at work or on your lunch break or wherever you might find yourself right now, just kind of pause. And all of us avoid feelings. This is really normal, totally common. So ask yourself, what am I unwilling to feel? What am I unwilling to feel? And this is a really powerful question, because it's going to give us kind of a clue as to what is happening right below the surface. And Amy and Samantha, I'm so glad you guys are on the show right now. Amy, you said that you feel some underlying, or you practice an underlying story of control when it comes to disassociating. And Samantha, you said fear and anxiety. And it's so fascinating. Each of us, this armor that we put up is going to be different for each of us. And so what am I unwilling to feel? Because then we can start to see and uncover this armor that we have, put on in the morning, is to avoid some primary emotion, fear, anxiety, doubt, some kind of truth that we are afraid to admit. That was really my story for the longest time. I wasn't being honest with myself about how I felt. And so we put this armor on as a means of temporary control. So when this emotion feels too intense and when we don't want to integrate, it's because we feel like the pain is too strong, and we end up shutting down, we end up numbing, we end up disassociating. And the sad thing is when we disconnect from ourselves and our emotions, we can't actually give ourselves what we truly need. And sometimes we are afraid of feeling like we're afraid that we're failing. We are afraid that we are unlovable, that we are not enough. And when we click, down and go and really look deeply, our most basic fear is I'm not enough, and therefore I won't be loved. And so the very thing that we need, we aren't even open to receive because we're so shut off from it. We can't feel loved or appreciated or seen when we're numbing out. And so then we have this shame and this blame story that's happening on why we got ourselves here. And oh my gosh, now we're depressed, now we're exhausted. And so it's really cultural for us as women to do this, to shut off, to show up, to, make sure our houses are clean and tidy and our kids are taken care of and our business is running and all the things that we feel like we're juggling as women. It's like we don't have time for our emotions. We don't have time to feel that. And because we have a lot of judgments oftentimes towards our feelings, it just makes it tricky. It makes it hard to want to feel or be present with what's going on right now. And here's the problem. The cost is when we disassociate, it cuts us off from our full aliveness. If we don't sit with it, it's always sort of waiting there like a skeleton in the closet. It's sort of like that beach ball scenario where you can press down your emotions for so long and pressing the beach ball down under the water and pressing and holding, and there's all this resistance. Eventually, that beach ball is going to pop up and explode, and it's asking to be exposed. And while we're pushing it down, while we're putting all this effort to press down, push down, it's exhausting. It's like draining us every moment that we don't allow our emotions to be here and to feel them. and to process them, it's like they eat away at us one day at a time. I love this quote by Rumi, and he says, "The cure for pain is in the pain." Our job, I truly believe, in practicing deeper vulnerability and coming back into a more integrated self where we aren't in avoidance of our lives, is to sit in this discomfort. And it means sort of having a open dialogue, an open conversation with our emotions, sitting with the fear, sitting with the anxiety, sitting with any negative feeling that might come up, keeping the conversation open with our emotions so that our resentment doesn't build up, so that we don't keep avoiding this need to bolt, to run. It's like all this resistance, all this pushback. I can't feel this. I won't feel this. It's not safe to feel this. It ends up running the show. It ends up controlling us. And so when we can show up and sit in and listen and get curious about what is coming up for us, it's incredibly brave, but it allows us to become more integrated and more whole quicker. And it allows us to not kind of run for the two options, which are feeling like we kind of just have to get over this, like we can't feel it, it's not okay to feel it, or the avoidance. We run, we hide, we bolt, we retreat. And so, as you guys know, this is like so common, and I find myself in this position all the time, that we'll do anything that we can do to resist conflict or pain in the present moment. It doesn't feel good, right? It's like, of course, I'm going to go towards something that feels better, which is numbing out or controlling or trying to control the future. And also, we don't have a ton of experience sitting in our discomfort. I held a workshop in November with a lot of women, and we talked about this mind-body connection and how our body presents different sensations and ailments and sicknesses and things like that, but how there really is an emotional root to everything that is happening externally through our body. And there is this mind-body connection. And so one of the exercises that I had these ladies do is after lunch, we sat, actually, no, I think we laid down, I had them lay down, and they closed their eyes. And for an hour, we did this deep breathing. And their job was to sit with any emotion that came up, any emotion that arose in their bodies, in their mind, that they had to sit with it and breathe through it. And after we got done with this exercise, and of course, so many of the women in the room, it was a really beautiful healing experience because they had been resisting a certain emotion and how they felt for so long that it was actually ended up being a relief once they could just let that emotion come up and sit with it and feel it. Of course, there were a lot of tears. People were crying. They shared with me afterwards that they had a new insight into their resistance of their emotions. That as those emotions came up, of course, I was guiding them and encouraging them. Like, it's okay. It's safe. You can feel what you're feeling. Feel what you're feeling. Feel what you're feeling. And just to allow that was really powerful. And so they were able to release, they were able to cry, they were able to process what was going on. And then after that time of just being with their emotions, it was like a weight was lifted off of them. They automatically felt lighter, they felt calmer, they felt more at peace, because that resistance, that pushing down the beach ball, all the energy required to do that was like suddenly they had that, free up of all that emotional energy. And it was like, oh my God, thank you. And it was really, really beautiful. And so I think that as we all leave, as we all disassociate and we drink and we excessively start kind of finding new ways to cope and to numb, we do have this deep longing of wanting to come home, for it to be easier, because there's just this fatigue of leaving the present moment. And there's no way to continually leave your body and avoid suffering. You either suffer, by pushing it down. It's like sort of now or later. But when we pay attention to it, we can be present for it. We don't have to sit there in the suffering. And so I like this quote from Brene. She says, The truth is that vulnerability is the center of all emotions. We are emotional beings, and to understand our emotions is going to require a bit of uncertainty and risk. Because if you think about it, that vulnerability, sitting with what's coming up, being present to our emotions, presence to our feelings, it is a little bit risky because it's like emotional exposure. You are looking at what it is that you are actually feeling. And so when we feel these maybe less desirable emotions, dark emotions, grief or shame or fear or guilt or disappointment or loneliness or scarcity, we risk this, feeling. We feel uncertain, we feel exposed, we feel raw, and the thing to remember in that moment when it just feels like, all your clothes are off and you're just laying there sort of like bruised and bleeding, there's this raw emotion that we do such really a terrible job of pushing down, but one that we give a lot of energy to. When that's finally exposed, it's like that is the birthplace of happiness, of healing, of peace, of joy, of fulfillment, of intimacy, of trust, creativity. Everything that we truly desire out of life, it only can come from the other side of feeling the discomfort. And if we operate in our life guarding our hearts, putting up that armor, we never get the opportunity to experience what it is that we are really longing, what our hearts are really desperate for, that intimacy, that connection. And so I want to encourage, we'll talk about these 5 ways of sort of doing this here in a second, but I want to encourage you to stay present with what's going on in that discomfort. It doesn't have to consume us. And I know that sometimes the fear is, oh my God, if I feel this, it's just going to consume me. And all of a sudden I'm going to go crazy. I'm not going to be able to function. That we'll never get out of this feeling of sadness or grief or anger. And it's helpful to know that like our emotions go on cycles. I mean, think about if you were to really feel yourself through the day, you're going to have a cycle of emotions. You're going to be happy one minute, you're going to be scared one minute, you're going to be overwhelmed one minute, you're going to be elated another minute. There's cycles. They eventually dissipate. They eventually pass. And so if we can just be present in it, our power comes from not needing to act out of the pain, trying to fix it, trying to diffuse it. We can just be with it. And then we can channel that energy into something productive, whether it's writing or painting or moving our bodies, some way to sort of like get that emotion, get that energy out. And I want to get into these 5 ways ultimately of staying present when it feels like it is too much, because this is going to be the road back to integration, back to wholeness, to mindfulness, to compassion, coming back into our senses and training ourselves and our thinking to notice what is here in the present over and over again, starting to realize when we get lost in this need to hyper control or to numb out or to play out worst case scenario, we can practice something else instead. Paying attention to what is truly present. And we can do this in 5 ways. So let's get into it. So the first way that we stay present is to recognize. I talk about this a lot, but the first step is really becoming aware that this is going on, that you're being triggered in some way. We have to recognize that, oh my gosh, I've left the present moment. We have to notice when we begin to shut down from being triggered. And I usually can kind of notice this in myself. Like when I was sitting at that table with these other successful entrepreneurs, all of a sudden when I got triggered and I left the present moment and I was playing out worst case scenarios and the dialogue of I'm not good enough and I'm going to be just a failure, what happened is in the moment I realized that I was like tapping my foot. So when I get anxious, I tap my foot. It's like, somehow it's like channeling that emotion, but I'm tapping my foot, or my breathing gets really wonky. It's like I'm not breathing naturally or effortlessly. It's like I can hear myself sighing, like, it's like my breath gets short. I'm sighing. And for me, those are for myself, those little indicators like, oops, I've left the present moment. All of a sudden, I'm totally in my mind now. I've left the building. Mary is gone. I'm not listening to what anybody is saying. I am literally in this spiral, this looping. And I start to feel inside like I get real panicky. I want to go get out of the building. I want to run. I want to go get a cocktail. I oftentimes will want to do something that's really out of character for me when I'm operating out of my highest self. And it's like weird behaviors, destructive behaviors, self-sabotaging type behaviors. And that's a real clear indication Mary has left the building. So I'm recognizing, whoa, I am so not present. I am not here. I'm not in my body. I'm not in this building. Like, I am gone. So the first way is you have to recognize when you are getting triggered, when there is pain present, when there is discomfort, when there is insecurity, and recognize, okay, I have left in this moment. We can't really do much if we don't recognize that we've left. So the first piece of this, the first way to come back into the present moment is recognize that you've left. Start to understand your patterns, your habitual patterns of leaving the present moment. What's common for you? What do you typically do? Because that's going to help you recognize and come into that state of awareness. Like, oop, I'm tapping my foot, or I've noticed my breathing is really weird. Oh, I didn't even realize, but my subconscious is like super overactive and I must have been triggered by something. So the first way is to recognize. The second way number 2, is to allow. And I really love this one. This is sort of another way of describing this is to befriend. To befriend what is coming up. So when we get caught in fight, flight, or freeze, this is when we have to meet ourselves with really deep tenderness, deep compassion, because we are freaking the F out, y'all. It's like, oh my God, like our sweet little survival brains have taken over and we're feeling all the intensity of the emotion. That is when we need to allow to meet ourselves with so much tender lovingness and to lay aside the judgment. Because the minute that we put on judgment towards like, I'm not supposed to be feeling this way. I don't need to be feeling this way. Oh my God, I got triggered. I shouldn't be triggered. I'm thinking really all these negative thoughts. And we start judging ourselves. That's not going to help the situation at all. We have to allow, we have to give ourselves permission to remain open, to feel whatever it is that we need to feel. That reminding ourselves, pain is a part of life. We can't avoid it by resisting it. We can only minimize it by accepting it, by dealing with it well, by being present with it, by caring for ourselves, by offering ourselves tenderness, compassion. And so one of the ways I do this is allow the emotions to arise is I intentionally try to name the emotion, like just giving whatever is coming up a voice. Okay, well, right now I'm really feeling hurt because my friend chose to go to this concert instead of spending time with me. Or I'm really scared right now because I don't know what the next step is and I feel like I should already know, and that makes me want to cry. My throat is tightening up. It's giving it voice, naming it, giving it a opportunity to communicate. Like, this is what I'm feeling. This is what's going on. Naming it. I'm feeling fearful. I'm feeling lonely. I'm feeling scared. I'm feeling overwhelmed. Because again, our emotions come in cycles. They're not going to stay there forever. They do not define us. And so being willing to offer ourselves grace and compassion for feeling what is coming up, validating these emotions and accepting them. Allowing ourselves to say, this is scary, this is uncomfortable, it's okay. Like, one of the things that I've been repeating to myself a lot recently as I've been going through a lot of transition in my life is I can do hard things. This is really, really hard. I'm really, really scared. But I can do hard things. I can do hard things. I can do hard things. I am okay. I'm loved. I'm not alone, even though the illusion might be that I am. I'm not. Just really comforting myself, offering myself that deep compassion. So we have to allow what is coming up to be there. That is the second way to come into the present moment, to allow. Now, the third way, and this is probably the most powerful step, is to embody. To embody. And this is where we get back into our bodies. In order to come into the present moment, we have to embody our beings. This combats the never-ending looping pattern that our minds will get in, where we play out worst case scenarios and one thing is leading to the next, and it becomes this whole domino effect in our minds, and we start thinking all these limiting beliefs. The way to sort of snap yourself out of it and to snap yourself out of this trance is to get into the body, to embody. You guys know I'm obsessed with Tony Robbins, and I love Tony Robbins. He's like a total crush of mine. I just did a Date with Destiny, his 6-day intense conference, which was just like, oh my gosh, so freaking life-changing. But one of the things that Tony says is he says, stay and you're in your head and you're dead. Stay in your head and you're dead. And so this is where we have to get back into our physiology, back into our body. And one of the most powerful pieces of advice that my therapist gave me years ago, she said, when you find yourself triggered, when you find yourself in this discomfort, she says, get into your body by asking, where are my feet? Find your feet. Feel your feet. This is really good for people who struggle with anxiety. Find your feet. Where are your feet? When you find yourself escaping the present moment, look down and go, where are my feet? Wiggle your toes, feel your feet. And then you can ask yourself, once you've named your emotion, like I'm feeling lonely, or I'm feeling angry, or I'm feeling resentful or anxious or whatever, ask yourself to embody. You can ask yourself, where am I feeling this emotion in my body? Where is this living in my body? Where is its home? Is it in my heart? Like, do I feel my chest is really tight? Do I feel like I have an elephant sitting on my chest? Do I feel it in my stomach? Oftentimes I feel it in my gut. Do I feel it in my throat? Am I having a hard time speaking my truth and speaking up for myself? Am I feeling it in my limbs and my fingers and my toes and my legs and my arms? Where am I feeling this? Not trying to change it, not judging any of the answers that arise. It's sort of like just let the first thing come up. But what are the sensations that are coming up in my body? This snaps us out of that trance. And it literally shifts your attention away from whatever the conversation is in your mind to the present moment. That's how we get into the present moment. Feeling our bodies, feeling the sensations in our bodies. Even if you don't feel the emotion in a certain area of your body, go back to where are my feet? Where are my feet? And you might just feel your body. Do I feel cold? Do I feel hot? Do I feel nauseous? Do I feel energized? Like oftentimes when I am feeling overwhelmed, it's almost like manicky in my body. It feels like I have ants crawling on my skin. My breath is shortened. I'm just sort of like, I'm usually hot. When I get in my body, it takes the focus off my mind. And so to me, this is really the most powerful step, to embody. So pausing to get back into your physical body. Now, the fourth way is going to be to connect. So we have recognized, we have allowed, we have embodied, and now we're going to connect. Once you're tuned back into your body, you can start coming back into the present moment instead of staying in all of these stories that you are playing out inside of your head. And one of the best ways to do this, once you've connected to your body, is through your breath. To connect to your breath. And this is where my yoga, my mindfulness training comes into play. And this is so powerful. Sometimes you don't need to go through the conversation and figure out all of the emotions and why you're feeling this and trying to solve the issues. And sometimes being inside of your head is like the worst idea, So it's like, get into your body and then let's connect with source, with spirit, with our life force energy, which is our breath. That is the most healing thing that you can do. And nothing will get you back into the present moment and combat numbing and coping and controlling like breathing. It's like offering yourself sort of this parental caretaking toward yourself, being a good parent to yourself and saying, okay, honey, think about a child who's having a temper tantrum. What are you going to say? Or a child who's like, having a meltdown. Breathe, honey. It's okay. Take a couple deep breaths. It's okay. Breathe. Take a couple deep breaths. There you go. Awesome. Good job. Let's take another one. Breathe deep. There you go. Good job. Just breathe. You're okay. You're okay. You're doing so good, honey. Just breathe. Just breathe. And that's how I speak to myself. When I'm in those moments when I know I've left the building and I'm freaking out and I'm coming back into my body and I start connecting with my breath, it's like, just breathe. I'm talking to myself like I would a little child. Just breathe. You're okay. You're okay. And then you can kind of connect to the present moment. What is happening right now? Start to notice what is around you. What is happening? If you're outside, start to look at the trees, look up at the sky, notice if there are people around you. If you're inside, it's sort of like, what's real? Okay, I can look at these walls. Like I'm in my office right now, so I'm like, okay, I've got these chairs in front of me. I've got these books over here. I'm inside of my house. I'm in Nashville. It's Wednesday afternoon. What's real? Noticing where I am, coming back into the present moment by becoming connected to the here and the now, becoming conscious in this space and time and reality, right here, right now. Connect to the breath, and then connect to your environment, connect to your settings. And you can just sort of repeat to yourself, come back, what's real? Notice around you, what's real? Breathe, take another breath. And that's where it's really beautiful, this processing. And once you've sort of gotten yourself into this present moment, this is where the healing happens. And so the final way is to nurture. And I love this question. Asking yourself, what is asking for my deepest attention right now? What is asking for my deepest attention right now? What do I need? What needs comforted? What needs soothed? What do I need right now? What is asking for my highest attention? What is asking for my deepest attention? How can I nurture myself in this moment? How can I make myself feel heard, seen, cared for, listened to? What do I need? How can I self-soothe? How can I nurture? How can I take care of myself in a way that says, you're going to be okay. We can do this. We can do hard things. This isn't going to last forever. It's just coming up. It's just an emotion. It's just a cycle. So if we're going to stay present in the now, which allows us to live fully alive, it allows us to not numb everything, to avoid everything, to disassociate. It allows us to be present for the good, for the bad, for the ugly, for the really great, for the really hard, being open to all of it so that we can truly live fully alive. And we don't let our fear run the show and check us out of life that robs us from the joy. If we're going to do that, we have to stay present in the now. And we do this by recognizing that we have left, by allowing whatever is coming up to come up, with befriending it with kindness, with gentleness, with compassion and tenderness, to get back into our physical bodies, to embody our beings, to feel the sensations of our body. And then we have to connect to our breath and connect to our environment, what's happening right here, right now. I'm breathing. I'm a human body in this moment today. And then lastly, we have to nurture. To give ourselves the things that we truly, deeply need to be fully integrated, aligned, and to feel cared for, heard, understood, and seen. That is the way back into the present moment to allow us to live fully alive. So guys, thank you so much for being present for this show, for carving out the time that you have in your day to listen, to increase your awareness and love for yourself. And remember, like I said, make sure you subscribe to this, of course, because there is no way you're going to hear about it on Instagram or Facebook. This is the only way. So subscribe on Google Play, on SoundCloud, on iTunes, on Pandora, however you are listening to music. Make sure that you subscribe to this show so you don't miss out on any of my future episodes. And until next week, let me remind you that the purpose of life is to be grateful, to be great, and to be full. I will see you guys next week. Bye-bye.